Thank you, Jen, and welcome everybody. I'll start again. So this is my name is Steele Wagstaff. I'm the customer experience lead at Pressbooks, and we're really pleased and happy that you're here for the first ever Pressbook User Group Meeting. I know I promised a lot, and the big promise is that at some point you will meet the mascot for this meeting. This is the acronym for this is the Pressbook User Group. It's called PUG, and the reason why it's named PUG is that in December of this year, our family adopted our first ever pug. His name is Debu, and he's currently on a hike. He'll be joining us midway through the meeting. You'll get to see his, I think he's going to be the second featured presenter, so don't get your hopes up too high. But you'll hear some snorting and he'll come say hello. The idea and the structure for this meeting is we're going to try to do these on a regular basis. We'll either do monthly or bi-monthly, depending on what the need or the appetite of this group is. And on the first Tuesday of each month, we're offering a kind of space for mainly for network and institutional managers of Pressbooks networks to come talk about common challenges or issues that they experience while running Pressbooks networks. And so the idea would be you'll get to hear from peers, meet with peers, and have an open forum of mutual aid discussion, talk about ideas, talk about things that you're doing, learn from each other. And the discussion we hope will be open. This is meant to be a forum where you're talking, asking questions. The way that we're going to structure it is have a little welcome and introduction each time. We're usually going to try to identify a couple of featured presenters who will talk about their experience and what they're doing in their institution. And then the rest of the time would be an open forum for conversation. The topic for today, as everybody I think saw, was how to welcome and onboard new users. And originally we had a couple of featured presenters. One of them wasn't able to make it because of childcare duties, but fortunately we do have one of our featured presenters, and then Jen, my colleague Jen Martin from Pressbooks, and I will fill in as the other featured presenter and talk about some ideas here. But that's how it's going to go today. And what I wanted to do is welcome our illustrious first featured presenter. We're really pleased to have him in his final month at Texas A&M University. This is Seyed Abdollah Shahrokni, and he is joining from Texas A&M as a longtime network manager there. His colleague, Lindsay Todorovich, I believe, is going to be taking over some of those duties, who's also here. Hi, Lindsay. And Sayed, we'll hand it over to you. And Sayed, the idea would be just to share with us or talk to us a little bit about how you approach user onboarding and welcoming new users at Texas A&M.
Yeah, thank you so much, Steele and Pressbooks teams. It is great to be here. I'm really excited about the first PUG meeting. And I have a short slide deck that I can go ahead and share. So my name is Seyed Shahrokni, and I currently serve as the Open Publishing Platform Manager at Texas A&M University. It's been a great opportunity being here and working with so many wonderful colleagues and authors. Today, I'll be sharing a little bit about how we approach onboarding and supporting new Pressbooks users at Texas A&M. So this is our open publishing workflow. So we use this as a general framework to guide both our work and the support we provide to our authors from early idea development all the way through publication and engagement. So in the first step in the process, if authors begin by submitting a resource idea form where they will tell us about their project, their plans, their timeline, and the support they need. And this will help us understand their project better and also the types of support they might need and we can provide to them. At this stage, we also create a Pressbooks shell for them so they can begin working. So as part of this stage, authors are also introduced to our publishing guidelines, which is a Pressbooks book. It's a resource that they review during the intake, and it covers topics such as accessibility, formatting, and general best practices. As part of submitting the form, they would also need to mark the checkbox, which says that they have read the guidelines and they are in agreement with it, with the terms. It's a CC BY book. Feel free to check it out. You can also adapt it if it works for your purposes. So our onboarding really happens during the planning phase, which is the second stage in the process. We introduce the platform in a way that's intentional and tied to the author's project. And we share a range of resources, including Pressbooks user guides, YouTube tutorials, and our own internal videos also. We also offer one-on-one support sessions to walk authors through the platform and answer any questions they have. In addition, we maintain a support page on our website where authors can access helpful resources and guidance as they continue working on their projects. So one thing we're currently working on and we're so excited about is an open digital publishing resource book. This is organized around the workflow and is meant to bring together useful tools and resources in one place. And it's a companion book to our guidelines book. Yeah, and that's a quick overview of our approach. Thank you so much, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
I have the first question, Sid. When you talk about we, tell us a little bit about the team there and how it's staffed and how you approach, like who's the we involved in this?
Yes, absolutely. By we, I mean the OpenEd team. My colleagues are Lindsay Todorovich, who is here, uh, who has recently joined us. Uh, my colleague Beth Chanette, who is the person behind our accessibility uh, work and also copyright. So all of us are accessibility trained and also copyright trained and certified. So the other colleague of mine is Hannah White, who's also our project management person in the team. And the director of our team is uh, Jennifer Pate, who's great. And so by we, I mean all of us as a team, but everyone has their own duties and responsibilities. I'm in charge of publishing, but as part of the publishing process, there are cross paths and cross collaborations and team tagging. So there are times when copyright comes into play and we need to consult together, work with the authors on that, for instance, and and so many other things which come up in the publishing process. So yes, the OpenEd team at Texas A&M University works collaboratively to cover different areas and work with authors.
And that open ed team is housed in the libraries from based on what you were presenting.
It
It seems like
is.
it's been growing, expanding. I think Texas A&M is a very large public university, but it's been
Mhm.
more committed to open education in the last few years, it appears. Were all of you previously working in libraries before, or are some of you coming from different backgrounds, or how's that team been comprised, and how are you handling that?
Yeah, this is a great question. So the Open Ed team at Texas A&M is indeed a new team. It's been in existence for about 2 years or so at this point, but there have been other OER focused work happening in the libraries and across the campus, across the different branches of Texas A&M as well. So, but the Open Ed team is a new team, and we all have been at different institutions before getting together here, except Beth Chanette, our colleague who has been in the library before. But Jennifer comes from uh, University of North Alabama, the director. I worked at Western Oregon University before coming here, and Lindsay is from the University of North Texas, I imagine. Is that so? Sorry, Lindsay. Would you unmute and say where you came from?
I came
Sorry.
from UT Dallas.
UT Dallas, sorry. You would imagine I would know because I was the chair of that search committee which brought Lindsay here. Sorry.
Putting her in
Uh,
Denton, that's dangerous for a person from Dallas. I mean, watch out. Okay.
No, those are very different schools.
But but it sounds like this has been conscious recruitment and A&M has been growing their program. I really appreciated seeing just the kind of different steps of the process and how you're developing assets and resources to meet user needs along the way. I wanted to open up just generally for questions from the audience. Those of you who are sitting and watching and hearing Syed talk so smoothly about this, Sophia, you've got a hand up. What did you want to ask?
I think it's similar to what Ed has put in the chat, but something I'm seeing at SUNY Oneonta and in your experience, how much is it helpful to give your faculty like a timeline of like what should be done in that order, I guess. Is that helpful or how does that conversation go? I feel like some faculty need a strict deadline, and some faculty, you know, are working on it when they can?
Yeah, that's a great question. So in the form, where the intake form, the faculty are given a chance to share with us how their timeline looks like and what type of support they need, if they are deadline oriented, how they want us to work with them. And in general, it depends on the faculty member, I would say. So although we operate off of this workflow, we understand that different faculty require different supports, and we're there for them to provide them with the support they need, however they need it. Some just need a little bit of hand-holding, some would require more check-ins basically to stay on track. And that's what my colleague Hannah does, defines a project management workflow for them and provides them with the support they need to be to engage in the work based on their timelines, based on their workloads. Mostly faculty are very busy with their work, so everything happens in a together basically. And
Thank you, Seyed. And I would say, Sophie, to that question, my experience has been that there's probably a spectrum of perspectives. So in Seyed's case, they're describing a very faculty-centered approach where the faculty will fill in an intake form and let them know the kind of support they anticipate and need. There are a lot of other Pressbooks networks that I'm aware of where it's much more like if they have a formal grant program, it's publisher driven. The publisher says, in order to participate in this program, here are the deadlines or the expectations that we have. I'm sure there's people on this call that are running a more publisher-centric model. And I don't know if there's anybody here that wants to speak to how they approach that faculty support or the question of project management versus deadlines or how they structure that. If you have perspective on that and want to share it, feel free to come off mute and share it or just drop it in the chat. While we wait for folks in the chat, I want to go to Jamie, who's got a hand up, and then I'll look in the chat to see what we've missed. Go ahead, Jamie.
I will say I approach supporting faculty in much the same way. It really depends on what they need. But we also we have the grants here in Oklahoma, so our deadlines sort of run based on that. My question for our presenter today is, do you allow people to create their own accounts in Pressbooks, or because you have the submitting the resource idea form and the requesting a Pressbook shell, which I think the way we have it set up, people can self-register and then create their own shell. Do you sort of control that process a little bit more? I'm trying to weigh if the way we do it is too loosey-goosey and I need to be a little bit more on top of who's making things.
Sure, that's a great question, Jamie. And at this point, we have the single sign-on enabled on our Pressbooks platform. So every Texas A&M University faculty member, staff member can potentially have an account at our Pressbooks instance. But we create the shell ourselves to make sure we have the oversight and maintain it better. And this is a work we've been doing with Pressbooks, making sure we set up the single sign-on so everything goes smoothly.
Thank you, Sid. And I wanted to just highlight a couple things in the chat here. So Liz Thompson from James Madison said, referring to the earlier question about what kind of support they provide, I leave the process up to the authors. I'm available for support in a mostly do-it-yourself environment. The number of projects in process can vary widely, smiley face. Lauren Ray from the University of Washington, they wrote, at the University of Washington, we provide consultations and guidance to get authors started, but have a very do-it-yourself model where authors could be working on their own without our knowledge or consulting with us a lot and getting some handholding and probably somewhere in between. We also have single sign-on model, so anyone can log on and create books without our mediation. And I think that's the thing that I'm going to highlight as a commonality. For enterprise Pressbooks networks, I think it's much, much better to do single sign-on as a way of managing account creation. Because then you can be sure that if people are doing self-sign-up, they are logging in with their actual credentials. Somebody just appeared in the chat. This is Dibu. He's the mascot for Pug. He was supposed to be the featured presenter for the second session, but it looks like he's got some other needs outside maybe that he's going to have to attend to. But hi, Deepa. Hi, everybody. This is a group named for you. It didn't have much to
He
say
looks
about that.
entirely disinterested. So
Yeah,
like,
okay. Well, he's got some treats just out of reach, so that's probably what's happening. But Deepu, thank you for being here, and we'll make sure that he makes an appearance at every future Pug meeting that he's available for. He does have a quite busy schedule. Oh, now you're interested, huh? The other thing that we were talking about with single sign-on, if users are using university credentials to log in, they still do have a username and password, or they can change the email if they do separate from the institution. But what's nice about that is that you're going to have much less potential for spam or other problems than if you have somebody just do sign up without using SSO. And then the other model is once they do create an account, are they allowed to create their own books, or is book creation mediated by network managers? And Sayed's talking about a model where they're doing the initial book creation and then inviting the user. And other people are talking about a model where as long as they come in through SSO, we're fine with them creating. We just keep an eye on it from time to time. I think both models can work, and you've heard people in the chat talk about either one. Liz was saying same as Lauren. Andrew Turner from Wisconsin said we also have single sign-on, and a bunch of people are chiming in for single sign-on. I think that's very much the way to proceed. Yeah. Were there other questions that I missed? I see 13 new comments in the chat. Okay, so Deanne Ivy from San Antonio says at UT San Antonio, we tailor the timeline for the author's needs and planned implementation in a course, but typically give a year through the grant program to develop the OER for institutional grants. Coordinating board grants have a different timeline that the authors set. The UT system grants have a more set timeline set by the UT system. I see you nodding, Sid. Is that similar at Texas A&M? Something similar?
Yes, grants have their own deadlines and time milestones. It's a totally different process, and again, my colleague Hannah works with authors and makes sure those stages are clearly defined. But when it comes to publishing, which is my division's focus, we work with authors, just support them with the publishing workflow, however they need to be engaging in that process.
Thanks, Ed. Jumping back to the chat, Amanda Gray from KPU says, I would say that we very much meet the author where they're at. We provide support for both funding and non-funded projects. I think the only difference is that for funded projects, we have more requirements around certain front or back matter being included. So probably a set of like a template that the book has to have. And funded projects have priority over our time if there's ever time conflicts. And by meet authors where they're at, I mean we provide as much or as little support as they need. Definitely something we negotiate early on in the project, so they customize it based on what books need early. Amelia Brister from Lewis in Louisiana says at Lewis, we're working on federal grants, so we approach it from a publisher model. Faculty writers are given a timeline and structure. We serve as project managers, which is, I think, a bit more common in that grant-funded model. A bunch of people said pug time, pug time, pug time, and now everybody leaves the Zoom room. Okay, so people got what they came for. I'll make sure Deepu appears later on next time. Pam, who also has a pug, or a couple pugs. Hi, Pam. And then Teresa says at Loyal and Marymount, we're working through a grant and structure the OER building process in phases. Research and identifying existing OER, so there's a discovery phase. Learning about the grant in year 1. Year 2 is designing the OER using backward design and learning the tools of Pressbooks and H5P and Hypothesis and beginning to develop the OER. Year 3 is review the OER through multiple lenses and then implement the OER in the second half of year 3 and early in year 4. We layer workshops throughout around things like open pedagogy, accessibility, and require annual and biannual check-ins and reports. So that sounds like a very structured process. Teresa, do you have any documentation about that or any information that we could drop in the chat or the resources that others could see? That sounds like it might be useful.
Yeah, I'll go hunt up a few things. There's a website, and also we
amazing.
ended up just putting together an OER, which is in revision for a handbook for our faculty that we're turning into a public use piece, but that should be done in another month or 2. But I can share, I mean, we're all OER folks, so just know it's in revision, but I'm happy to share the link in a little bit. I'll go find it.
Thank you, Teresa. Lauren, you had a hand up. Do you want to go ahead and contribute, add something?
Yeah, I had a question for Sayed about Texas A&M. Apologies if you mentioned this in the beginning. I was a little late, but I'm curious if you have other platforms that your library supports, and if when faculty authors come to you, if you're also kind of determining whether they're sort of on the edge of being an OER and then, sending them to another team, or yeah, whether you have other like departments in the libraries that are supporting open publishing that aren't necessarily OER, and if so, do they get kind of consultations for different platforms?
Yeah, thank you so much, Lauren. This is a great question. Yes, Texas A&M Libraries is huge. I mean, like Texas A&M in general is huge. But there is this division called Open Access Unit, which we work with collaboratively, but there are folks who refer to us and we refer them to them, and there are folks who refer to them and they refer them to us. Uh, their focus is generally journals, publications, faculty publishing in in open journals, open access journals, but our focus is open educational resources. So, and there, in terms of platforms, we do support authors who decide not to work in Pressbooks. Pressbooks is the gold standard tool, as we call it in the field. But then we also support authors who want to publish using Manifold, Open Author, or other platforms that authors use to publish their work.
Thanks, Sayed. Going back through the chat, there were a few other comments. One of the questions from Andrew is, I'm almost more curious, how do folks handle deprovisioning old accounts or abandoned projects from folks who leave their institution? And then Lauren says, we've been working a lot on setting this process up over the past year. Happy to share some info on our process with you. I imagine that could maybe even be its own topic for a future PUG meeting. Like, we talk about weeding collections, but sometimes weeding your platforms can be as helpful or useful too. I see some thumbs up. Lauren, you're nodding. Anything you wanted to add here or say it later? Go ahead, Lauren.
Yeah, no, I think that would be great for a future topic, because I'm also in reading the chat just really interested in how other people are doing this. And we have so many books and so many users on our platform at this point because we've had a very like come one, come all approach. But yeah, we've sort of been working with trying to get out the accessibility deadlines to those folks who are administrators on public books, and so determining what that list of people is sort of one track, and trying to be in regular touch with them about the accessibility deadlines, and then alongside that determining like a criteria for what constitutes like an abandoned book project, then determining, who's the admin on that book. Some of those admins have left the university, so then a whole extra step of trying to find a next person on the book that we might contact. So there's a lot of documents and workflows to kind of like take care of that. But I think one thing, being an SSO institution, is that we've focused more on the books and less on users, because it's my understanding that if we were to remove a user from the platform because they've left the university, if that person came back, in another role later or as a student later, that would not work well with them getting back into the system with their university ID. So because of that, we've just sort of set aside the knowledge that we have a lot of users on our network that are no longer at the institution and focused more on management of the books. But anyway, a whole other pug.
Yeah, thanks, Lauren. That's pretty interesting. Sid, anything you wanted to add about monitoring and deprovisioning either users or books accounts on A&M's network?
Yes. So when we decided to switch to a single sign-on model, we had a host of accounts in our system which were scam accounts or spam accounts. So that was the main reason we had to do this. And from time to time, we also go through the users on our platform and make sure all represent actual people. So sometimes we have to remove them.
Yeah.
But since we switched to a single sign-on model, we haven't had that problem the way we did have it in the past.
I will echo that. Jessica Kirshner from Viva, which is Viva, if people don't know, is in Virginia, and they operate a long-standing statewide grant program. It's a single network, and it's largely that publisher model with grant-funded projects. They said that we didn't set up SSO because there's over 70 institutions sharing the network, which would have been kind of a big project. But they moved to mediated account creation, and Jessica deleted over 1,000 spam user accounts that had been created through self-registration. Amy Hoffer says, same here in Oregon, a lot of spam accounts. And then Andrew says, that's so many spam accounts, adding to the list of things that keep me up at night. So the easiest way to get rid of this is what we've been, with all of our enterprise clients, we've proactively been notifying people we're turning off user self-registration. And if you want to allow unmediated account creation, you've got to do it through SSO. That's been our policy and practice lately. Jessica said it was super easy to delete, just something to be aware of. Deanne, also from UTSA, says anyone can create a book on the network through SSO, but I typically reach out to new authors to let them know about resources and how we can support them. I have the Pressbooks settings set where I get a ping when a new book's created. For non-grant funded books, these are a little looser. I'm wrapping up a project right now to archive our OER and ensure discoverability on a variety of platforms. It's been a process of tracking down the authors to confirm metadata and licensing for non-grant funded projects, and I have plans to have more consistency and structure for non-grant funded books moving forward. This would be a great topic for a future pug as well. I think, Deanne, thank you for that. Amy says, same. I'm notified about new accounts and new books. I'd love to be notified when books are taken public because sometimes this happens without any review, and I need to be more on top of accessibility in the future. So I just want to take a minute and just show what people mean by this in case you haven't been aware. If you are a network manager in Pressbooks, you'll see from the Administer Network menu, there's a settings option. There's the default network default, and there's a tab right now that says book and user registration. These two settings are the key settings. This check mark means if this box is checked, users on your network can create and clone their own books. So some people were saying we have a model where we create and clone. In their case, that box is checked. Seyed was saying at Texas A&M, no, that's not our model. We create the bookshelves. So in their case, that box is unchecked. The other setting that matters is this email notification setting. The email notification setting allows you or anyone that you work with to receive email notifications when one of two events happens. Either a new user account is created, or a new book is created or cloned. So if you want those notifications, like some people are saying, we let people do SSO and we let people do book creation, it's usually a good idea to say, I just at least get a notification whenever one of those events happens. That helps you stay on top of when a new book has been created or a new user account has been created. So these are available at the network level. And if you can speak with your network manager, or if you are a network manager, it's probably a good idea to turn on email notifications and get them if that's the model that you've chosen to use. Amanda says, the majority of projects we support are doing the conversion and the authors only receive training at the end of the project so they can handle any updates. If they want to get in there earlier, we're happy to do the training earlier, but most authors just want to focus on writing the book instead of having to learn a new platform on top of that. That makes sense. Jenny now says, this is a little tangential, but how much are faculty paid through grants for these processes at different institutions? Great question. Does anybody want to take that answer? You can answer in the chat or you can unmute. What does the grant program look like, and what's the faculty compensation model at your institution? All right, I think the answers are going to have to be in the chat. I'm not caught up yet, but Teresa came back in the chat and posted a bunch of information about Loyal and Marymount. We'll add these to the notes document that we're taking. So Jen and I will monitor this and add it to a notes document. Thank you. That looks great. SSO accounts have occasionally been hacked. You can change their status to subscriber. What about when users leave the university? Yes, Linda says we change their status to subscriber, and they have, do they have SSO? Linda at Michigan State does not use SSO. They create books and invite users to them. Lots of subscriber accounts come through Pressbooks results. Harper at BC Campus says they implemented their own temporary user account types that have delete dates. They negotiate with the professor. It's helped manage student accounts that are only used for one course. That's so cool. How? Is it a different role than subscriber, or do you manually handle the deletion of these accounts? They run open source and they're doing it in a custom plugin, it sounds like. So it's really cool. There's some excitement about that. The grant program, Deanne Ivy posted a link about faculty grants. And then BC OEL has put together a small list of the various OER grants available in the province of BC. Hasn't been updated in a year or so, but there's a link that gives a good idea of what's been done. Teresa Schultz says our faculty receive anywhere from $1,500 to $4,500 depending on class size and whether they'll do adapting work, and then link to their grant page. Lisa Lewis says at TAMU CC, that's Texas A&M Community College, or no, Texas A&M Corpus Christi, apologies. If an author leaves the university, we'll help them export their project and place a copy of their completed work in our institutional repository before we close their account. But we have a limited number of books, so we can't leave books by unaffiliated authors on our network indefinitely. Andrew says, this is the kind of process I'd like to establish. I struggle with the part where I reach out to authors and find their email addresses are no longer active. It's like managing an estate after someone's died sometimes. You're like, well, who do I contact? Who's the next of kin here for this project? It's been orphaned. Lori Brunn says $1,500 for support materials, $2,500 for course redesign, $5,000 for OER creation. Linda Miles says at Michigan State, adopt 1,000, adapt 2,500, create 4,000, new edition 3,000, scale up to all sections 5,000. So similar range. And Deanne Ivy has a couple other links about a new institutional grant program that looks really interesting. So thank you everybody for answering and responding to that question. Are there any other questions for Seyed? If not, we have a second little presentation. We'll share some resources that Jenn and I put together. Last call on questions for Seyed. Teresa Huffis has posted a large Department of Ed grant information over 3 years for social justice that had to include diversity, equity, inclusion, and I'm not sure what the A, but maybe accessibility perspectives, be accessible, interactive, and instructionally sound. The faculty creators were teams from 4 institutions that received about $30,000 over the 3 years for their creation. But they also had a lot of training on Pressbooks, accessibility, H5P, DIEA, anti-racism to do, plus reporting and allowing implementation surveys. But we are the exception. Typically, OER creators are not paid this much. Thank you, Teresa. All right. So thank you all. Thank you, Seyed and Lindsay. That was great from Texas A&M. Jenn, I'll hand it over to you. We'll talk about some of the other resources that we have for folks in this situation.
Sure. So the first thing I'm going to share actually backs it up a little bit more to some resources we created that help folks promote Pressbooks on campus. This was something we were hearing from the community, and we produced this sometime last year, what we call our Pressbooks promotional toolkit. So you can find it on the website under the support menu. And this brings you to a collection of materials that are customizable that you can use for different things to talk about Pressbooks. So there's just some one-pagers here that overview what is Pressbooks, what are the benefits to you as an educator, and all of these are customizable. So the idea is that you could put your contact information in here. So if you wanted to distribute these to folks, and then you can just customize that however you would like, so folks know who to get in contact with if they're interested in learning more about Pressbooks. There's some logos here if you want to create your own materials and just some guidelines for how to do that. There's a customizable slide deck that kind of goes over what is Pressbooks, how do you use it, what are some use cases that, like, what are the types of resources folks are using Pressbooks for. And there is this book spotlight card that opens up a Canva template that folks are free to use and adapt. We had, it was Maricopa Community Colleges who approached us. They were having an event. They wanted to showcase their top 10 books. They wanted to print out these little table cards. And so We designed these for them, and then they're adaptable for folks. If there's any projects you want to showcase, or if you want to showcase multiple things in your catalog, and the idea is you do a little spotlight, and then if you click on this QR code, ignore my broken phone with the green line down the middle of it, but then it would open up that book or your catalog for folks if you want to showcase what you're doing. And then there's a few resources that get into Pressbooks results if you're using that on at your institution as well. So just a reminder that this exists to kind of help you spread the word about Pressbooks. And then once we get into okay, we've interested a new user, and now what does the onboarding process and resources look like? We have this slightly new welcome email when a new user is added to a network that kind of breaks down the resources that we offer to folks here at Pressbooks. So I'll show this in a second. We have a few different video playlists on our YouTube page. We have our user guides, our free live training sessions, which Steele will go over in a minute. And then we've recently started a quarterly newsletter that folks can subscribe to that is faculty focused, which is different than the newsletter that most of you would receive on a monthly basis. This one is for faculty and users. And so this first link here, I'll just show we've recently reorganized our YouTube page so things are easier to find. And we've really prioritized bite-sized training videos that are very specific for a certain action. So how do I clone a book? How do I import my content? And they're all a few minute snippets so that folks can easily find answers to what they're trying to do. And then if you look at our whole Pressbooks, there's just different playlists. If they're a results user, then there's a separate playlist for that. That's everything I think I was going to go over. Any questions about anything in the promotional toolkit or our user welcome email? Okay, Steele, I will let you show the other resources in a little bit more depth.
Sure, thanks, Jen. So a few other things that we put together that we think will be helpful for folks in your position. At the website itself, there is under support resources, a whole variety of support resources that are often designed for people that kind of stumble on Pressbooks. So for people that are on Pressbooks Enterprise networks, this helps them orient themselves with 3 frequently asked questions. But down below, towards the second half of the page, these are like the starter resources. Now, a lot of people in the larger world are not using Pressbooks through an enterprise network. They're just self-service single authors. And so that's a product that we call Pressbooks Self-Publisher. So there's a playlist and video for them. But most of the people that are coming through you are coming through an institutional or an enterprise, either self-hosted or enterprise-hosted version of Pressbooks. And so this video playlist is the one that Jen referred to about getting started on a Pressbooks Enterprise network. Following that, if users still have questions, we often try to do what we can to make sure end users have their needs met. And the kind of flow is, for most people, most of the time, start with the user guide. So there is a user guide for all users that's at guide.pressbooks.com. And this covers a whole range of things that people could do with Pressbooks as a faculty creator or a regular end user. So there's an introduction, a 6-step guide to making a book with Pressbooks. Each of these sections can be expanded and you can see the full table of contents. And then how to manage your account, how to start a book, how to add and organize book content, things about managing books with users, book information or metadata, managing your media, reviewing settings, multilingual publications, how to use the editor, how to add interactivity, so the things about H5P or hypothesis embedded media, how to style your book, how to make exports, how to use the content toolkit. So this does the automated accessibility checks or checks for broken links. And then how to prepare your book for publication and distribution. So there's quite a lot of material here in this guide chapter. People can jump in and search or find just the sections they want. And then if the if the guide was helpful, but you wanted in-person training, every month, our support colleagues and I will provide these trainings. There's 3 training webinars that we offer every month. So from this, you can visit the list here and you'll see there are, you can see the full list of webinars from webinars. But if I were to click on webinars, you'd see there's 3 types of webinars. The end user training webinars are the ones that are probably of most interest for this conversation. Clicking that link will take you to this page, and you'll see every month we offer the same 3 sessions. Getting started with Pressbooks, which is what it says, getting started with Pressbooks, and you can see a description on the event of the kind of learning objectives or the goals of this session. Anyone can sign up for this any month, anytime. It's free. It's offered live in person, usually by my colleague Mitch, who's here in this meeting, and we'll cover the topics about how to get started with Pressbooks. The second one that we offer in the sequence is about creating engaging learning materials with Pressbooks. I usually teach this one, and this one's a bit more focused on teaching and learning applications. We're talking about principles of instructional design. We're talking about how to select and build appropriate H5P activities, and how to use Pressbooks Results, which is the product where you take a Pressbooks book, you configure it for grading, you connect it to your LMS, and you send grades back to the gradebook, and then students and instructors can view details of student performance and see how they're learning. We'll also talk about hypothesis and social annotation, how you can add annotation to your book. And if there are people in the audience that are interested in STEM stuff, I'll usually talk about advanced mathematics and math notation. The last of the training sessions that we offer each month is called Prepare Your Book for Publication and Distribution. And this is usually for people that are a bit further along in the publishing process. So if you want to learn how to prepare your book for distribution, we'll talk about theme selection and changing a theme. We'll talk about metadata and contributors with language that isn't super intimidating. We'll talk about using the Pressbooks Content Toolkit to do accessibility checks or check for broken links and to fix those rapidly. And then we'll talk about publishing a book, how to make it public, how to publish it in full or in part, how to generate and share export files, whether it's for print PDFs, digital PDFs, or EPUB files, and then a little bit about customizing a theme and customizing the appearance. So those 3 sessions we offer typically every month, and the schedule for that is changing. We try to offer them in times that work for people in North America, in Europe, and Australia. So usually once a quarter, we'll make sure that we offer a time that works for all those time zones. But you can see time zones and registration dates here on this website. Those will always be kept up to date, usually 2 months in advance. The other thing I wanted to mention is we've been overhauling the Pressbooks Network Manager Guide, and there's a new section here that's really part of this was done with this particular pub meeting in mind. In the Pressbooks Network Manager Guide, you'll see there's an introduction, and there's a new section called Get More Out of Your Pressbooks Network. And there's a section about recruiting and training users, getting help when you need it, building a better product, configuring integrations, and helping users publish accurate and accessible content. This section about recruiting and training users is what we're talking about today. There's some suggestions here about activating in terms of service plugin, the promotional toolkit that Jen mentioned, the training webinars I just mentioned, and then a little bit about promoting successful publications. So there's some suggestions, some guides, some resources there. We'll probably continue to update this as we process all of the notes and things that you all shared. And what we'll definitely do is we have a document here where we're going to be keeping track of notes and adding resources. So we'll go through the chat from this meeting, and we'll add a bunch of notes and resources to a running guide document. I'll pause there and say, okay, questions for Jen or I as presenters, things that you wanted to see or things that you have, questions you have about Pressbooks or administering networks or onboarding and inviting new users that you think we should know or that you'd like to know more about. One thing I see in the chat is a request from many people that says, Amy Hoffer first asked it, and then Kate McNally Carter and Lauren Ray are giving it thumbs up. I would like a follow-up to this question. I have the settings turned on to get notified when a new book is created, but there is no way for a network manager to get notified when a book changes status from private to public. That's a great observation. That there is no current feature in Pressbooks that makes this possible, but I hear that there's demand and appetite for that. That makes sense to me. Users can make their books public, and network managers often want to know that because they may have some expectation that something happens as part of the publication process. So we can take that as a feature request, add that back to our team. That's something that probably would go in the core open source Pressbooks, and I think that would be a welcome feature for lots of folks.
Mitch did just mention we have a feature request for this filed.
Perfect. Thank you, Mitch. Thomas, who's also from support, if you've ever emailed support, you probably met with Thomas or Mitch. They chimed in and said that's a great idea. Jamie, you got a hand up? Go ahead.
Yeah, it seems like I'm always the one asking, because of my situation being the network manager for just one part of our larger enterprise network. I just checked and I can't see the settings for our network to set those, notify me when a new book is created, etc. I didn't know if that's possible to allow me to have that
Yes.
permission.
Yeah. So Jamie's in a situation, and I'll just explain some context. There are a couple different types of enterprise Pressbooks networks. There's those that are used by single institutions, and there's those that are used in shared settings. And in the shared setting, there is a few people that have the role of network manager for the whole network. And then they'll often have a role called institutional manager, who's like a mini network manager, but only for books and users from a given institution. The current way that the notifications work is that they only work at the network level. So anybody could be added to get network level notifications, but we don't have an institution level notification setting. That would need to be a new feature, or your network managers could add your email address to be notified for anything on the network, and then you could filter and just ignore it if it doesn't look like it's a Tulsa thing. That would be something to talk to Tracy about, and they could make that change easily, or if they give us permission, we could just add your email address to that very quickly. Yeah, good question, Jamie. Lots more about grants in the chat. I'm just catching up on that. Were there any other comments or questions that I missed that should be addressed here that I didn't talk about?
There was a bunch of stuff in the chat about collection management, and it
Yeah,
was kind of related to something that I asked earlier, and maybe this could be a separate meeting or sometime we talk about this because it seems like it's an interest of the group. I've been a little bit concerned about seeing books that we were using disappear from other press books, whether they're managing their own, book load. And, in the old days, we used to have a practice that if it was being used on our campus or in our or our network of campuses, because I'm here from SUNY, we would immediately just have a copy of the book and have our own local version of the book
so
just
that it
in
wouldn't
case.
disappear. Yeah.
But we kind of, as things got pretty stable in the OER community, we stopped doing that because it didn't seem as necessary. And we didn't want to have a bunch of different unmodified forks of a book around if people were making updates or people were making changes. It didn't seem productive to
Sure.
do that. And so, Title II was a big stressor on a lot of us in open publishing because some people felt like, well, if it's not accessible, maybe I need to take it down. And we're seeing things that were being used in classes disappear.
Yeah, I think that's a real concern, and I think this does happen. I'll share a couple of thoughts about this. One is there is a lot of confusion and maybe fear and uncertainty around how to achieve accessibility compliance and what people's legal risk and obligation under the law is, especially around the changing rules with the ADA. I don't know if we have good statistics about the number of public books that have been taken down or removed because of concern about accessibility, but there's a couple of different approaches that we've seen people use. One, as you say, if you know there are instructors at your institution teaching from a book, making your own clone or copy is prudent in some ways, or contacting the institution that hosts it and letting them know and saying, hey, we are planning to use this term. If you're making any changes or planning to take it down, please give us some advance notice so that we can prepare for that. That isn't always possible. And so one of the other things, and Amy Hoffer referenced this earlier in the chat, and I just wanted to point it out. So for those of you that are using enterprise Pressbooks, I'll show you an interface that's available to you. The open source folks, you have the same tools, they're just in a different interface. But one of the options that we added over this last year is, what I'm showing here is the book list. From the book list, you can see the publication status, the catalog status, and a new status that says whether a book is archived or not. When you mark a book as archived, so for example, this book has been marked as archived, this book is still public. So you'll note that the book is public, but the archived book now has a banner that appears everywhere on the book that indicates to all readers the book was archived by its publisher on this date. It's no longer being updated. So in this particular case, my understanding is this book may or may not be accessible, meet the accessibility guidelines. It's still public and it still meets the obligations under the law because it's clearly marked as being archived on the website. So you shouldn't update this book and keep maintaining it and try to comply with the law like sneakily. but it's a way to allow the book to remain public and available to others while you make some plan or make some decision about whether you're going to bring it into compliance. And if it has an open license, this one doesn't, but let's find one that does. This one here, this book is both public and archived. This book, for example, because it has an open license, Ed or someone else who is interested in maintaining this book could clone this book to their network, could bring it out of the archive state, could make the accessibility changes needed to comply with the federal law, and then it wouldn't damage anyone because you'd have a non-archived version out there in the wild that is fully compliant. So that's one of the options that I see people are doing it, and I don't know, there may be other thoughts about that. That might be a conversation for a future meeting as well. Was there anything else that I missed in the chat? If not, I want to kind of seg to the last part of the meeting. So the big question that we had was, we want to plan our next pub meeting. Thank you for coming to this. This was great turnout and a really high level of engagement. We want to continue this practice, and the question is, we're moving the product updates to a bi-monthly, every other month, and we were thinking to just alternate user group with that. So the idea would be our next meeting would be in July. And the question is, what are the topics people most want to discuss in them? I heard some people say there's some appetite to talk about weeding and publishing and weeding old or abandoned projects. Are there other topics that people feel like, hey, this is a burning topic for me? It'd be great to discuss it with peers.
Lauren Ray just mentioned something interesting in the chat about
Yeah, please help me.
not knowing about the GitHub upvoting that folks can do, and that this would be an interesting future pug to look at the pug or the GitHub feature requests and how the community can provide input on that.
Yeah, great idea. So I think if you have other ideas or topics that you'd like us to discuss, our next meeting will be the first Tuesday of July. We'll send out some information about that. And then prior to that meeting, I'm going to post in the community forum maybe 3 or 4 potential topic ideas, and we'll have a vote in the community forum. So we'll practice democracy here. We'll send an email out with a summary of this and inviting folks to vote on that in the forum. Then we'll finalize and announce the topic soon, and we'll see you all in July. Thank you for coming to First Pug. Thanks for meeting Deebu. Thanks for your patience with my technical difficulties and my inability to find the chat.
For those who need to go, thank you so much for coming. I think this has been a wonderful conversation. Thank you, Seyed, for stepping up and being our first presenter for us.
Thank you so much for having me, and it was great, folks.
Yeah, thank you, Seyed.
Yeah, absolutely.